Well, greetings, everyone.
Greetings.
So, let me just start with this. Somebody told me that the first service is more responsive. So you got to prove them wrong, okay?
Amen.
All right. So we'll see how we do. Today's message, the title is this: Don't miss Christmas. Don't miss Christmas. So would you just kindly tell your lovely neighbor, just say, don't miss Christmas. All right. Well, let me start with this story. There was an atheist. He was complaining to his Christian friend. And he said, well, you Christians have your special holidays, such as Christmas and Easter. And Jews celebrate their national holidays, such as Passover and this thing, Yom Kippur. But we atheists have no recognized national holidays. It's unfair. Discrimination. Well, his friend replied, well, why don't you celebrate April 1st?
There you go.
For some of you that are quite slow in getting this, it's April Fool's Day. You want another one? You do know what would have happened if it had been 3 wise women instead of men. Don't you?
Yes.
So here's what's going to happen. They would have asked for directions, arrive on time, help deliver the baby, clean the stable, make a casserole, and brought disposable diapers as gifts. Oh, man. In the book of Luke chapter 2, tells us an incredible story of Christmas. And I want to share with you 3 of these stories from the book of Luke, and then we'll go into Matthew chapter 2. And so in the book of Luke, it tells us this story. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. And everyone went to their own town to register. So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. Verse 5. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in clothes and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. Now imagine that for a moment. No guest room available for them. Well, let me just give you a little bit of a culture background back in those days. Well, if you live at the time when Jesus was born, people were pretty much, they were hospitable. In fact, they would love to welcome you in their homes. You let them stay in your home. I mean, that's just the culture. But this is not the case with the innkeeper. He was pretty busy and pretty occupied. He had a full house. His inn was just packed. There was just no room. And here's the thing. He was so busy and preoccupied that he completely ignored, look at this, he completely ignored the need of a place for a mother who was about to give birth. He basically didn't care. Now, let me ask you this question. If I come knocking at your door and I was about to give birth, well, okay, let me use something else. My wife was about to give birth. I think that's better. But you never know. Jesus was born, I mean, he was a miracle of virgin birth, and so, but anyway, so let's just say we come knocking at your door, and I tell you my wife is about to give birth. Would you say, well, there's just no room here for you? I don't care what you do, but sorry, we can't help you. Would you do that? Or would you say, knowing that my wife is about to give birth, would you say, oh man, she's about to give birth, come on in. We'll do whatever it takes to help you. Would you not?
Yeah.
Come on now. But somehow, look at this, Christmas was in front of the innkeeper, but because he was so occupied and busy and so concerned about other things that he missed Christmas. Christmas was in front of him, but he missed it. There was not even a hint of compassion in his heart. Not even a hint. And he was so preoccupied and just so busy with stuff that he missed Christmas. And then in the book of Matthew chapter 2 tells us a story of a man who had an opportunity to experience Christmas, but he also missed it. In chapter 2 verse 13 tells us this: when they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Get up, he said, take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod, look at this, the king, Herod, is going to search for the child to what? To kill him. Now, friends, look at me for a moment. King Herod had an opportunity, would you say, to experience Christmas, but because of his pride, he too missed it. And then in the same book tells us a group of people that also missed Christmas. Matthew 2, verse 1. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of King Herod, the Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. So the news pretty much spread out. It was spread all over Jerusalem. Now look at this. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. In Bethlehem in Judea, they replied, for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Now look at me for a moment. These religious folks that knew scriptures, the Jews, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law that supposedly knew scriptures, they had an opportunity to experience Christmas, but their religion blinded them that they too missed it. My goodness. Christmas was in front of them all. They all had an opportunity to experience Jesus, the Son of the living God, the reason for the season, but they missed it because they were blinded and consumed of all the wrong things in life. Now, let me ask you this question. Is it possible that we could also miss Christmas if we get so consumed of the wrong things in life? Amen. And the answer is yes. So I just for a moment, for us to take an evaluation of our lives. What consumes me? What consumes you today? Because whatever consumes you, if it's other than God, you will miss Christmas. what makes us miss Christmas? What makes us miss Christmas? Well, for the innkeeper, just like him, when we get so consumed of the busyness of life that we don't have any time for God at all and being so occupied but pursuing things that really don't matter. Are you with me? I mean, we can fall into the trap of pursuing success, material things, relationships, money, stuff, and the pursuits. Look at this. I know that so many people are trying to pursue the approval of people, just trying to get valued. And I just want to let you know you are valuable because God said so, period. Amen. You don't have to pursue anybody trying to get their approval or trying to accept you. You are accepted by the living God. And now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong if God blesses you with money and success and all of that. He uses all of that for His purposes, right?
Yes, sir.
For His purposes. What I'm saying, listen to me for a second, what I'm saying is this. When we get so consumed by all of these, then it becomes a problem. It becomes a problem when we get so consumed by all these things. The only indication of having God in your life is asking this question, okay? The only indication of having God in your life is asking the question, does God have all of me? Now, ask the same question. Does God have all of me? Does God have all of me? If the answer is yes, then you will truly experience what Jesus talked about in John 10:10. I have come to give you what? Life, and have it in abundance. If the answer is that God have all of me, then surely, for sure, that you will experience this incredible life that Jesus had promised for you. That you will experience it in abundance. Of power, of life, of the life that defeated hell and grave. The life that really is so victorious and the life that set us free. The life that defeated, death and rose from the grave, and the one who ascended into heaven. That's the life that is so victorious. And the only way for you and I to be able to experience that is if God has all of me. Well, let me just say this, that you and I cannot experience God fully by just having a little bit of Him. You and I cannot experience God fully by just having a little bit of Him. You can't experience His life in abundance of peace and joy and victory and love and power and freedom when you just have a little bit of Him in your life. You can't. There's just no way in the world that you would experience the fullness of God in your life. In order for me to experience Him to the fullest, God has to have all of me. God must have all of you in order to experience His life in abundance. Then, just like King Herod, pride could let us miss Christmas as well. Pride. King Herod thought that he was good because of his position and power and success. He was the king. And so he thought of himself, I'm good. I'm good because of my success and my power and position. But I want to tell you today, friends, that power and success and your position has nothing to do with your salvation. That is the work of Christ and Christ alone. It doesn't matter what success and position or power you might have, you might possess, but it has nothing to do with you being saved. And that is the only work of Jesus Himself. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Come on now. Hallelujah. Pride is a problem, isn't it? Do you know that we too can be deceived, thinking that just because of our power or of our position or success in life, that we are good? Oh, I'm good. I'm good. because of my position, or I'm good because of my success, or I'm good because of my power. I want to remind you again, has nothing to do with your salvation. That's the work of Christ. James chapter 4, beginning from verse 6, tells us this, that God opposes the what? God opposes the proud and gives grace to the humble. Now look at me for a second. I don't know about you. I don't like the idea of God opposing me. And the only time the Bible tells me and tells you that he would oppose you if you have that issue of pride. Do you know that pride is why Lucifer fell? Do you know why we're struggling with sin? Because of pride of our ancestor, Adam and Eve. It's all about pride. And so pride is really an issue. It's my issue. I'm a very prideful man, naturally. And so there was one time in my life that God really opposed me. Early in my ministry, my wife and the church was growing. And then the business that we had was growing and whatever. It was just thriving and blah, 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 all this stuff. And I was prideful. And so I would go to church and I'm like, oh man, look at what Angela's doing. And then I would go home and the business was making money and I was like, oh, look at what Angelo is doing. And I would talk to my investors. I was like, man, look at what I'm doing. Oh man. And God opposed me. He literally took everything away, stripped me off, all of it. And I found myself with absolutely nothing. And then God spoke to me. He said, son, are you ready to repent of your sins? And I realized that I was a fool. I was a fool. I was a fool. I was so prideful. There are only two things that I pray almost every single day. I simply say, Father, give me a spirit of humility. When I say, friends, to really give me a spirit of humility, I really do mean it. Because I know me. I know me. I've experienced what I've experienced. Those times were so difficult in my life. Because I was a fool. Thinking that Angelo is good. And then the second thing is that God opposes the proud, but he gives grace. When I repented of my sins, and God literally transformed my heart. And then my wife felt like it's time for me to pray for my husband. God, would you expand his territory? God led her to pray that. And God began to expand my territory. It's not because Angela's good, but because God knew my heart. My only desire is to give me a spirit of humility and a teachability spirit. That's all what I pray for every single day. God, I don't want you to oppose me because of my pride, but I need your grace. So keep me humble. And plus, God gives me Annalisa that if my head is so big, she would come up to me and say, do you want me to get a needle and just pop your head? Naturally, I'm prideful. And I need to surrender and just put that to death every single day. I know what it's like when God opposes you. But I also know the grace of God when you're humble. The first service is really wrong about you. Then you got the Jewish people and the chief priest. You got them. And somehow the Jewish people and the chief priests and the teachers of the law have missed Christmas because, now look at this, because they thought that their religion was good enough. Their attitude was like, oh, our religion, we're good. We're teachers of the law. We know scriptures. We're good. And we follow the law to the teeth. I mean, come on. We make sacrifices. We're good, right? At least for what they thought. But realizing this, that they too miss Christmas. And so look at me for a second. Don't ever think just because you have a religion or whatever, that's going to save you. Do you know why Jesus came to this earth? He came to planet Earth not so that you and I can have a religion. Right? Jesus did not come here so that you can say, oh, I have a religion, I'm Catholic, oh, I'm Baptist, I'm born again Christian, I'm Pentecostal, No, he didn't come for any of that. He came so that you and I can have a relationship, not a religion, but a relationship with the living God. That's why he came, right? Are you with me? And so here's the thing. When we get to heaven, can I somehow say to Jesus, oh, Jesus, man, I'm Pentecostal. And man, I'm a very religious man. Man, I speak in tongues. I mean, I believe your word. I mean, I know the word. Oh, come on. Right? I mean, I'm with the assemblies of God. God, right? Would you really think that God would say, oh, man, you're with the assemblies of God, you're Pentecostal. Oh, man, come on in. No? But what if I say to Jesus, Jesus, I have surrendered my life to you. I made you my Savior. You are the Lord of my life. Angela is completely dead. And I just love you. I mean, I just worship you. You have all of me, God. What do you think he would say? Come on. Your name is in the book of life. Come on in. Because I have prepared a room for you. That's what he would say. Not because of my religion or my position. Not because I'm a pastor, whatever. No. It's simply because of the work of Christ. And Christ alone. Wow. You're really proving them wrong. And now, on the other hand, so you got the innkeeper, you got King Herod, you got, the Jewish folks and the religious folks. They really miss Christmas. On the other hand, the Magi, when they saw the star, guess what? They immediately packed and they began to travel for thousands of miles to see and to experience Christmas. I mean, they were so excited about this. The Magi from the east. Well, guess what, friends? They experienced Christmas. The Magi knew about the signs of the coming of the Messiah. They knew about the star. They were waiting patiently for the sign to come, and finally it came, and they were like, let's go and worship the Messiah, right? And so when they came with gifts, I mean, they literally experienced Christmas. Praise God. And then you got the shepherds. The shepherds? Do you know the shepherds back in those days stood at the bottom of social ladder? Do you know that they shared the same undesirable status as tax collector or even a dung sweeper? Man, they're pretty low. And all of a sudden, the angels showed up and gave the announcements of the birth, the coming of the Messiah. I don't know about you, but the shepherds, the low folks, the low people. But somehow God decided them to experience Christmas because, guess what? God knew that they were humble enough to respond to the invitation of God. Because they would pay attention. They immediately left to go to Bethlehem to see Christmas. They too saw Christmas and experienced Christmas. Now, you got Simeon. The Bible tells us he's an old man who was waiting for the promise of Christmas. And so when Mary and Joseph brought Jesus to be dedicated, all of a sudden, Simeon saw the child Jesus. In fact, the Bible tells us that God gave Simeon a prophecy that he will not die until he see the baby. And so all of a sudden, Simeon not only saw, but held Christmas right in his arms. And then he said, "You can take me home, God. You can take me home because I saw the salvation of Israel." Wow. And then you got Anna, a lady prophet. Her husband, according to the story that Anna's husband passed away. And she was a widow, and she just loved spending time at the church. And she would just go there. She would just stay there fasting and praying. And also waiting for Christmas. When Jesus came to the temple, not only Simeon experienced Christmas, but then, she also saw and experienced Christmas at her old age. Well, the question is, what do they have all in common? What do they have in common? The first one we see in this story is that with all of them, with the shepherds, with Anna, Simeon, and the Magi, we can see about humility. Don't we? All over. God blesses the humble, folks. He invites the humble into this relationship. He gives grace to the humble. He is for the humble. He loves the humble. But guess what? He opposes the proud. The second thing that we can see from them is this desire for God. They desired God. Unlike the others that were so caught up in their religion and so consumed by all this stuff that really didn't matter. They were so consumed by that they missed Christmas. But for them, they just desiring for God. And guess what? Because of their desire, they experienced Christmas.
Amen.
And then the last thing we can see from this story is this word patience. They had been waiting for Christmas for a very long time. The Magi knew about the story, but they waited for the star, the sign. For Simeon and Anna, they were kind of waiting for a long time. I'm really old, God. I don't know how many more days I have left, but you gave me a promise that I'm going to see this baby, but where's the baby? But they waited patiently. Simeon waited patiently. Anna waited patiently. And then you got the shepherds. I would assume that the shepherds would have a conversation about God, the salvation, the promises of God. And because they were so humble, that they also waited patiently. And God sent his angel to give the announcement. See, go there and experience Christmas. So, in conclusion, friends, is this. I don't think you really do want to miss Christmas. And some of us could miss Christmas if we're not careful. when we get so consumed of things that really don't matter. When we get so consumed and so busy with all this stuff, and we say, well, God get this much. Let me just remind you again, you will never, ever experience God to the fullest and experience His life in abundance by having a little bit of Him. You can't. God has to have all of you in order to experience Him. I don't know your situation today. Maybe Christmas is a tough year for you. When it comes, maybe it's a tough year. Maybe because of a loved one that have passed. Maybe because of family issues or whatever the case may be. Maybe you're just overwhelmed with problems and challenges in your life, in marriage, children. Or maybe just struggling with your past. Maybe you're here today and just struggling in so many different ways in your condition physically. I don't know. But I want you to know that God is a faithful God. He doesn't want you and me to miss Christmas, but to experience Christmas. And I want to tell you today, the only way to experience Christmas is by allowing God to have all of you, to have all of me. By swallowing our fried chicken. Because pride will get us in trouble. We really need to come to a point of humility. And allowing you to pray that. Just give me a spirit of humility, God. And don't ever think that religion will save you. Or by being good will save you. Because they will never save you. What saves you is your faith in Christ Jesus and Jesus alone. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
I want to give you this passage that comes from the book of Isaiah. They will call him Emmanuel, which means God is with you. God is with me. That in the midst of your turmoil, God is with you. Let me close with this story. When Jesus was with his disciples in a boat, and all of a sudden a storm came that almost killed them. Do you recall what Jesus was doing? He was sleeping. Are you serious that Jesus sleeping? And so the disciples were panicking because of this tremendous storm. And so they woke Jesus up. Jesus, don't you care that we will all die? Well, Jesus woke up and said, really? And he stood up and rebuked the wind. And all of a sudden, it became calm. And then he looked at his disciples and said, you of little faith. How in the world that Jesus can sleep during a storm while the others were panicking? Well, here's the difference. The life of Jesus Christ is dependent on the Father. The disciples' lives were not dependent on the one that was in front of them. And that's why Jesus said, you have little faith. I'm right here in front of you. I'm with you. God, Emmanuel, is with you. And what are you doing panicking?
Yes.
Friends, you will panic, you will always panic when your life is not dependent on Christ. I guarantee you that. Your life has to be established in His life. That's why the Bible tells us, Jesus Himself said this, abide. Say that to your neighbor, abide. Abide in me, Jesus said, and I will abide in you. Abide in me and in my words. Isn't it interesting? He said abide. Why? Because if you don't abide, you will always find yourself panicking and always acting or responding. Jesus, don't you care? When Jesus would just look at you and say, did you forget? Emmanuel, the God who created all things is with you and in you. This year was a tough year for us, for me, my wife, and our family, because of Annalise's condition and just so many other things. But in the midst of all this, what's going on in our lives, my wife and I, we know that we could just come to Jesus and sleep in His presence. Because I know that He's got us. He's got you, friends. He will always be on your side. He gave you a promise. He will never leave you nor forsake you. In the beginning of the story of Matthew, God gave us a promise, Emmanuel, God with us. When He left planet Earth, what did He say? Lo, I am with you always, to the very ends of the age. And that was confirmed by the writer of Hebrew, the book of Hebrew. He will never leave you nor forsake you. That's why my wife and I could walk in freedom in spite of. Because to be honest with you, nothing else matters to us and for us. What matters is our God, Jesus, my wife and I, that are completely surrendered to Jesus, our kids. That's what matters. It's for all of us to truly experience the life of Jesus Christ in abundance. How many of you would like to just receive that?
Can I say something? I just feel like I need to say this. None of this glory goes to Satan. He pounds my chest. He pounds it. The demons pound my chest. All the glory goes to God because I hear God in my chest now. And He can never, neither things present nor things to come, can never take that away. And I just felt like I wanted to tell you that because that was for me. I had to say it. God is so good.
Thank you, Sheila.
I'm sorry, but I had to say it. Thank you, Jesus.
So we have a message, don't we? Don't ever miss Christmas ever again. It's not about what we think Christmas is all about. We say, yeah, Jesus, He was born. But really, how often do we realize that perhaps we really don't understand what Christmas is all about? Don't miss Christmas. Christmas is with you. The Son of the living God is with you and in you. Do you receive this message today?
Yes, sir.
Would you just bow your heads and close your eyes for a moment?